What is up guys, Taiki here, and in this video I wanted to do a recap on 2021, the year of narratives. So if you like the content, please like and subscribe and leave a comment in the comment section below. So I want to make this video after reading this piece by the great Cobie. For those that do not know, he's one of the OGs in the space. He's survived essentially all the market cycles, and I think it's important to learn from one of the OGs because he's been through it all. And he kind of compares video games to that of crypto, right? And I kind of do agree. I feel like when it comes to farming, it's like a video game, right? You just like throw coins everywhere and just like hope you make more coins. You know, like the moment you become too attached to like the monetary value of things you're doing in DeFi, I feel like is like the moment you start to, you know, get too scared and timid, and you're not going to be able to hold through dips and rips, etc. But let's keep going. And I think this is a good way to think about crypto, right? If you're not having fun, then like you shouldn't be in crypto. And the metagame, right, can be described as a subset of the game's basic strategy and rules, which is required to play the game at a high level. Obviously, if you ever play video games, you understand this, right? In every game, there's like there's like the strongest class, right? And if you don't understand that strongest class, then you're not going to be able to form strategies around it. Similarly to crypto, you have to understand, like, what is the metagame? Like, what is the narrative? Like, what is the market sentiment? Because if you don't understand why people think certain ways, then you're never going to be able to be ahead of the markets. And, you know, I'm going to interchange the word metagame and meta with the words narrative, right? Just because I feel like they can be interchanged. And on my channel, I've often talked about like narratives, right? Because the strongest narrative, right, which Cobie calls the meta, is the alt L1 narrative, right? And he kind of calls it Ethereum killers, but I don't really think that's the case. I don't think any of these chains are claiming to be Ethereum killers. But this is like one of the easiest narratives that we could have played this year, just because of like, you know, if you actually try to use DeFi and stuff, it's pretty obvious like why this has happened. First of all, like Ethereum gas fees are just broken, right? It can't accommodate that many people. Ethereum scaling takes a long time, right? And you know, all these maxis, they tell their viewers and their audience that, hey, like Ethereum rollups, scaling solutions, they're coming. But you know, me, like I talk to devs and they're like, yeah, like it's not ready at all, right? I can't even deploy my application on Ethereum, like Arbitrum Optimism, because like the RPCs are bad, right? Think about it, like why has Aave, right? Aave isn't even on Arbitrum or Optimism. Why is that? It's because the RPCs can't handle it, right? It's almost impossible for these applications to deploy. And maybe it's gonna take, you know, maybe in 3 months that's gonna change. Maybe in 6 months that's gonna change. But in the short term, the truth is, it doesn't scale. It does not scale. I believe in Ethereum like scaling solutions in the long term. Yes, like it's one of the reasons why I hold a bunch of Ether in my portfolio. However, in the short term, no one cares. Like, do you care? Like, do you care that rollups are coming in like, let's say 6 months? No, like in the short term, we want to make money, right? Apes want to make money. Crypto participants want to make money. So what do? We deploy capital in applications and ecosystems that we think will make us the most money on a good risk-adjusted return basis. Because, you know, crypto is fun. It's meant to be fun, right? Because this time we can actually do things. Do we wait for ETH to scale, or do we experiment with new speculative chains with low fees? Answer is pretty clear. And we're not saying, like, I'm not saying that, you know, like these chains are going to flip Ethereum. I never said that, right? Like, in fact, I hold more Ether than any other L1 coin, like in my portfolio. However, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to try these new chains out, right? I think it's foolish not to. And I feel like, you know, the moment you start bridging to these new chains, like the reason I found like great new farms like DeFi Kingdoms is because I just bridged to Harmony, right? And there's nothing on Harmony except DeFi Kingdoms. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll speculate, right? It wasn't like, I didn't find DeFi Kingdoms because I'm like a genius, right? I just found DeFi Kingdoms because I just took 15 minutes to bridge to Harmony, right? When no one else didn't, when everyone else didn't. And in the bull markets, these narratives are really easy to play, right? Like, especially when, you know, because we all know Ethereum is bullish, right? Like we all know ETH and DeFi is bullish. So if we see these other L1s take market share away from Ethereum, the easiest narrative is, you know, why can't AVAX be 10% the market cap of Ether? Why can't it be 20% the market cap of Ether, right? It's really easy to say that and people buy into it. But I think when the markets become bearish, these trades kind of get crushed, just because I do think decentralization matters. But in a bull market, no one cares, right? And that's the meta, right? You have to understand that. The ETH maxis that say, you know, decentralization matters, like yada, 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 I'm sure that they're right in like on like a 5-year time horizon. But on a 5-month time horizon, I think they're wrong. And that's all that matters. That's the meta. That is the meta. And these alternate L1 trades, like for example, I'll take Luna as an example, right? Because I've been bullish Luna since like $7. I've been like super bullish Luna, but I don't plan on holding Luna until like age 50, right? There's no way, right? I'm gonna sell at some point, right? I'm not selling anytime soon, right? Mine's locked up for Astroport and whatnot, but like most of these traders that's like pumping these L1s, I don't think they're planning to hold these for the long term. In fact, I think their aim or their goal is to like outperform ETH by like 5-10x and then rotate into ETH or something, right? Or Bitcoin or stable coins or other speculative plays or something. So I think in bear markets these trades get crushed, but in a bull market it's gonna keep working, right? And why fight that trend? I feel like people have this infatuation with wanting to be smarter than markets, so they go against the trend. But I feel like that's one of the worst ways to trend, because going against the crowd is just not good for such a reflexive asset class like crypto. And in next week I'll make this video about like 2022, like predictions and whatnot, and like how a bear market might form and stuff. So I'm not going to touch on it too much in this video, because I know this video is going to get way too long because I made so many slides. But let's keep going. And like I mentioned, going against the meta is just awful, or just being wrong in general is just awful, right? So he kind of, anyone that believed in the early 2021 like DeFi ETH metagame ended up holding Rook from February 2021 like minus 80%, right? Like who does that, right? Who does that? Well, actually I did that, right? If you go back to my channel 9 months ago, I was literally making bullish keep it out videos, Rook videos, like this video, like I am not selling my Rook. I sold my Rook. I sold my Rook after losing a lot of money. And I feel like everyone has to like go through these experiences, right? It's like you have to lose money, and then after you lose money, you have to reflect on like why you lost money, right? It's like I lost money because my diesel was like god awful, right? I mean, these videos were god awful. Like look at these thumbnails. It's so bad, right? But anyways, let's keep going. And from this point onwards, I kind of want to go over each quarter, right? Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and kind of go over like what actually happened, and why it was, or why anyone that like thought critically about crypto and the metagame were able to thrive and make a lot of money off of these this change in meta. Because 2020, I feel like the entire narrative was like Bitcoin, ETH, like decentralized, like DeFi, etc. But I feel like this year, 2021, wasn't that, right? No one cares about decentralization in 2021. In 2021, people care about making money. And how do you make money? Centralized chains. Q1, BSC creates Millionaires. So this is a chart of BNB on a log scale from late 2020 to early 2021. And this was absolutely crazy, right? I think at the beginning of the year, this thing was roughly $35, and it peaked at like $600 in like April to May or something, right? And I was kind of coping just because I knew about BSC, right? All my friends were in it, but I was just the ETH maxi at the time. I was like, you know what, like Binance Smart Chain, like CZ, super centralized, like no one's gonna use this. I hate this, like screw that, ETH for life, right? And then I just like saw all my friends make millions of dollars, and I was just like coping with my Keeper DAO bags or something, right? I was like, damn, like this is ridiculous. So, when this happened, I was pretty upset, right? I was like, damn, like, did I miss my opportunity to make it in crypto? Obviously, like, no, right? I mean, Q1, I mean, if anyone got into crypto in Q1, then like they're obviously doing super well. And Q2, I think, was, I guess, a turning point in my crypto career, my crypto journey, just because I was just like in massive emotional pain after missing out on BSC, because I ignored it because it was centralized, right? I mean, that's how I thought, right? Big mistake. And after making that mistake, I wasn't just like coping on the side and just like, like jerking off to ETH, right? About how decentralized it is. I learned from that mistake and was like, you know what? Like the next chain that's super centralized that launches, I'm going to ape, right? Like, cause no one cares. No one actually cares, right? And that's kind of when Polygon came, and that's kind of when my channel got kickstarted. And I know Polygon, like the ETH maxis, I mean, Polygon, it's politically aligned with Ethereum, so people actually like Polygon. But at the end of the day, it's super centralized, right? It's like one of the most centralized chains out there. But it's cheap, it scales, and we can use it, and fees like 0.001 cents or something. But I think Polygon at the yearly open was 1.8 cents. And it peaked at like 2.8, like 280 or something. It's actually pretty incredible, right? And I mean, I often see on Twitter and like social media, like, like, oh, alt season is about to get started. But 2021 has literally been the longest alt season in all of humankind, in all of crypto existence. And, I actually think it's going to keep going, actually. But I feel like the pumps are going to get smaller, and the cycles will get shorter, and etc. I'm not saying that, coins are going to like go from 2 cents to like $3, like because Matic's almost at $3 after like the correction and whatnot in May. But it was absolutely crazy, and I did pretty well on this trade, actually, because this was a time when like people didn't really know about these incentive programs, right? And as a Polygon farmer, I knew that incentives were bullish, right? Because I was literally farming on Matic. You can go back on these videos. These APRs were insane. Like, you were literally like making free money on Aave, right? Just because no one like was going on Polygon. And this was great. And I took away lessons from this, right? First of all, like missing out on BSC, that was bad. I aped Polygon, and that was good. And that kind of reaffirmed my thesis that, okay, this L1 trade, as long as these chains have incentives, it's going to be super, super bullish, right? Because in a bull market, like, no one cares about decentralization. It's all about which thing will make me the most money, right? That's all it is, right? And no one cares. Like, in 10 years, it matters. In 10 weeks, it does not matter. And this was when I was like, L1 coins, or like L1 coins with fundamentals and users that people can actually use, is going to be bullish across the board. So obviously there was a crash in Q2, right? This is like May and June, and when things like Luna went from $22 to $5. Actually, I guess it went to $4 on Binance or something. But this is pretty wild, right? I was living through this. It was it was very painful. But I didn't change my narrative, right? I still thought that these L1s were bullish, so I bought Luna, right? I bought Luna, and like Q3 and Q4 is like when the alt L1 trade really took off again. So I bought Luna in July. I bought AVAX in August just because they had an incentive program, and those were good trades, right? And at this point, like I took the screenshots last night, so the numbers might be a little bit off, but I mean, Terra used to be $5, right? And AVAX used to be like $16, $12 and whatnot, and it's gone up a lot, right? And this entire alt L1 narrative, the meta, is mostly enabled because of failures. And I'm not saying Ethereum is a failure, but Ethereum scaling just takes way too long. I remember back in March, Optimism made a blog post about how they're gonna launch like in 2 weeks or something, right? I remember that, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my god, Optimism finally here. Like I don't have to go into BSC or something. But then they delayed it to like July or something, right? They were like, we're gonna launch in March, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna launch in July. I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And it's December of 2021, and there's nothing on Optimism. There's literally nothing on Optimism. Like, no one's on Optimism. Ethereum has failed at scaling in a way that allows the chain to be used by regular people. It's prohibitively expensive to use on the L1, and the L2s are very new and have their own user experience issues. The alt L1 metagame is rooted in Ethereum's success and enabled because of its failures, right? So everyone knows ETH is bullish, right? So when these other L1s take market share away from Ethereum, then these alt L1s are just uber bullish, right? Because they get repriced. If Ether is $500 billion market cap, and like AVAX is $28 billion market cap, like, does that make sense? Like, why can't AVAX be 10% of market cap of Ether, right? Like, it's possible. Is that the right way to think about it? Who knows? But in a bull market, that's how we think about it, and keeping it simple that way has worked out really well for me. And it kind of goes over, like, it kind of comes to show like why I think that this alt L1 trade still has legs. I've been saying this for all this time now, because if ETH is bullish, and if ETH goes up, then alt L1s should also benefit, right? Because if we're thinking about like relative terms, if Ether goes up 10%, I mean, why can't these L1s also go up 10-20%, right? And I think it's going to continue just because like ETH L2 just is not ready. It's not even close to ready. The ETH maxis might tell you otherwise, but their timeline is kind of it's not perfect, right? Because I'm sure in 6 months or 12 months it's going to be great, but in the short term, no, no. I've talked to devs, right? It's near impossible to deploy on Arbitrum. It's near impossible to deploy on Optimism, right? And I guess the simple question is like, why hasn't Avi deployed, right? I mean, that should answer many questions you might have about Ethereum scaling. So let's talk about relative valuations, right? So, you know, I kind of touched on this earlier, but you know, it's really hard to value these things. Like Sol versus Luna versus AVAX, like, I mean, yeah, they're all bullish, but like, how do you value these things? So, you know, I think the market kind of has to think about in terms of like, you know, what percent market cap can this chain reach relative to Ethereum? Kind of repeating myself, but you know, that's kind of how all these things have pumped, right? You know, it's really not out of the question. Like, why can't, you know, AVAX be 10% of market cap of Ether? I really don't get it. And I feel like the next narrative that might happen in 2022 is let's compare to Cardano, right? And I don't mean to anger the Cardano and Axies, but you can't ignore the fact that there's nothing on Cardano, right? It's kind of like a cult coin that's led by Charles. And maybe Cardano ends up being like one of the best ecosystems out there in like 6 months or 12 months. But in the short term, like how do you value something that doesn't exist, right? It's kind of just trading on hope and like strong marketing, right? By the foundation and like a bunch of influencers and whatnot. And, you know, I don't mean to anger the ADA Axies, but I'm just sharing how the market thinks, right? This is the meta, right? If the narrative can be like, why can't AVAX be 10% of market cap of ETH? Why can't the narrative be, well, AVAX is usable, Cardano is not. Why can't AVAX flip Cardano, right? Like, what's stopping it? There's like nothing really stopping it, right? I'm like, this is kind of how the market thinks, and maybe I'm wrong, right? But I'm just saying that in 2021 it worked, right? In 2022, I think it will continue working to a lesser extent, right? I don't think you're going to get 10x's in these L1s, in any of these L1s, to be honest, because they've all went up a lot, right? And the market priced it in. But I still think that these L1s, they're going to outperform ETH as long as we're in a bull market. In a bear market, these things will get crushed, in my opinion. And who knows, maybe the ADA ecosystem is an amazing one in 2022 or 2023 or 2024, right? I've seen these like arguments about like, oh, the Plutus backend, it's almost ready. You know, when it's ready, you know, it's gonna launch, right? But like, you know, like how do you value things that doesn't exist, right? It's just way too hard, right? So I just like don't touch ADA just because, like, how do you value it, right? But because the crypto markets is driven on speculative narratives, it kind of works things that way. And lastly, in Q4, kind of talk about GameFi, just because I think a similar thing is happening in GameFi in general, and the metaverse and whatnot, right? With the Facebook rebranding to Meta and whatnot. And, you know, it's all based on the success of Axie, right? I think Axie, yeah, yearly open, 54 cents. Now, you know, I think it peaked at like roughly $200. It's at $100. You know, crazy trade, right? Crazy trade. You know, Delphi Digital nailed it. Amazing, right? And, you know, when Axies goes up this much, it's normal for people to ask, like, what's the next Axies, right? Like, Axies, to 50 cents to $200, like, all right, what's next, right? I want to be early, what's next? And, you know, to put it bluntly, like, the next Axie is probably just Axie, right? But it's not going to stop people from speculating on the potential next Axie. And, you know, Cobie mentioned this too, but I think people have the desire. They want to be early. They want to feel early, right? So any game that even has remotely a chance of succeeding is going to be compared to Axie, right? It's just how the markets are, right? It's how narratives are formed, right? Maybe it's unjust, right? And in fact, I think it's unjust, right? I don't think you can compare anything to Axie yet, at least. However, people are going to do it, right? So if people are going to do it, and the market's going to move that way, then like why fade it? And obviously I think DeFi Kingdoms is kind of just falls under this category of just being compared to Axie, right? And DeFi Kingdoms is like the shiny thing that kind of popped up in Q4 that everyone is looking into, and the narrative has been this is the next Axie, right? Or it's going to be, you know, close to being an Axie. And to be honest, like, I mean, I've been farming this for like 3.5 months, and I'm extremely happy with its performance. But part of me is also like, a part of me also doesn't understand like what the hell is going on, right? Like, how is this thing at $1 billion market cap, a circulating supply, right? And I mean, I got in at like $1.30 ish, And $15 Jewel, like I never would have imagined this would happen even in my wildest dreams. So, you know, to be honest, like I'm probably like one of the most bullish public figures when it comes to DeFi kingdoms, right? In terms of like when I like enter, like, and how bullish I've been and whatnot. But like I have no idea what's going on. Like I'll be real with you. Like I have no idea what's going on. Like, I don't think this valuation makes sense, to be honest. I think it has potential, but you know, does it really, like, does it deserve $1 billion market cap? Like I don't know. Like I have no idea what's going on actually. Actually, I do know what's going on, and I'll talk about that too. But you know, I remember like back in early November, like everyone was DMing me about like, you know, when Jewel was $3.50, saying how like, you know, how bad of a call it was. But you know, obviously in hindsight, this is a funny video to look back on. But anyways, I have no idea what's going on. Actually, I do, right? But it's still pretty crazy, and it kind of goes back on the Axie comparison, right? Because everyone's they're just going to compare it to Axie, right? This is like, Axie is $7 billion market cap, almost $30 billion fully diluted. So people will say, hey, if Jewel can be 20% of Axie's market cap, I will make a lot of money, so I buy. Then there are other people saying, Jewel and Axie, they're both great. They should trade at similar valuations. And that's an easy narrative, right? I mean, why can't it be similar to Axie? And then there are other people that believe Jewel is better than Axie. It will flip it once the market realizes how much better DeFi Kingdoms is. And I'm not really claiming like any of these points, right? I'm just sharing what the market narrative is around DeFi Kingdoms. And to be honest, like, I mean, I haven't sold any of my Jewel. So, and it flipped my Bitcoin position, I believe. Even though it was like a small bet. So I obviously think it's going to go higher, but I do acknowledge the fact that I don't think this makes any sense, right? It's the GameFi space and the narratives around it is kind of crazy. It's pretty crazy. And me personally, aside from Axie, I think the majority of gaming projects are overvalued. Maybe Axie is overvalued too. I don't know. And chances are, like, we're so early into the metaverse, gaming, etc. And I think there's a high chance that the next big crypto game that reaches the next billion users, like that doesn't even exist yet, right? Like, what are the odds that like the next game that reaches billion users exists in 2021? I think, you know, if you apply probabilistic thinking, I think that, you know, the chances are over 50% that the next game doesn't exist yet, right? But you know, it's not going to stop the apes from aping. It's not going to stop people from creating these narratives, and you know, it's not going to stop me from not selling my Jewel, essentially. And you know, this is back to Cobie's article. Sometimes the meta is simply enabled because of the community's like-mindedness or like-minded desire to be early, right? New market participants simply refuse to buy the bags of rich OGs and instead opt to create their own value, right? For example, ETH, right? The people selling ETH are the ETH OGs that already hold a bunch of ETH, right? So like, do we want to buy their bags, or do we want to be early into something like AVAX and create our own narrative about, you know, how Joe is the best thing since sliced bread, how Wonderland is going to change the world, etc., 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 right? And how Emin Gunsier is going to be the next president or something. They see that something was successful, and they have simply decided, we are not playing that game or their game. It's our turn to be rich, right? And I see this everywhere, right? Anyone chilling, you know, AVAX or like Luna, Sol, you know, Matic, Phantom is like, yeah, like we're gonna go up more than Ethereum, right? Anyone like having heavy bags of Jewel is like, yeah, like we're gonna flip Axie. And I mean, I own heavy bags of Jewel, but you know, like I don't know if I believe that, but you know, if the meta says that, you know, this trend is gonna keep going on, then why not write it? Like, I'm just gonna write it, right? And maybe I end up holding the bag. Maybe I'm gonna sell too early, and maybe it does flip Axie, right? And I'm gonna be laughed at and be like, haha, he sold too early. But you know, I think, you know, these meta narratives and these you know, reflexive narratives in crypto is kind of what enables these parabolic gains, because in crypto, assets become more bullish the more they go up, which is such a dangerous narrative. But you know, it's everywhere, right? Like, for example, like the Avalanche Rush narrative, it's like, you know, I think they allocated like 10 million tokens for Avalanche Rush. So as long as the price of Avalanche goes up, then the incentive program is worth more, right? I mean, I kind of get it, right? I kind of get that narrative, but you know, any narrative that becomes more bullish as the price goes up is going to be a dangerous one for anyone involved. And you know, identifying the meta and the dynamics behind the meta are probably the most important skills of any shitcoin trader. If you understand the dynamics and incentives, you can figure out whether a metagame has some positive feedback loop or sustained vector of growth. Positive feedback loop meaning that, you know, AVAX goes up, AVAX becomes more bullish, right? Positive feedback loop. AVAX goes down, AVAX becomes less bullish, right? Or you can figure it out if it's a wildfire rapidly burning out of natural resources, leading only to its own demise. Of course, identifying the meta early, buying the meta coins, selling them into meta exuberance is the ideal and obvious way to use the meta. In general, the most successful altcoiners use the meta to increase their value holdings over time, right? So trading the meta to stack Bitcoin or Ether. That's kind of what I've been doing, right? All my AVAX profits rotated into Bitcoin or ETH. All my fandom profits rotating into Bitcoin or ETH. All my jewel profits probably rotating to Bitcoin or ETH. Maybe stables, maybe other plays. And I'm in some other speculative plays too. It's probably going to rotate it back to Bitcoin or ETH at some point, right? Or other high conviction plays I have. And, you know, I feel like the people that's experiencing max pain right now are traders that are stuck using different metagames that are not currently in reality. Lots of people have spent the entire year charting Bitcoin dominance charts, which doesn't make any sense, right? I think Bitcoin dominance kind of makes sense to look at it, but you know, like it kind of, when new coins are being introduced every single day, and when, you know, Bitcoin dominance takes into account like stablecoin issuance, right? Because we should all expect the stablecoin chart to just be up and to the right? Just because you should expect more stablecoin adoption in crypto. So Bitcoin dominance is going to be a down only chart, maybe some pumps in between and whatnot, but you know, I don't think it really makes that much sense. You know, it's kind of basing it off of 2017, right? And I sometimes fall victim to this, right? I kind of sometimes expect like a Bitcoin run just because I lived 2020, right? And it's really, really hard to ignore what happened in our past, just because in 2020, like Bitcoin went crazy, right? I mean, it went from like 8K to like 30K when the rest of the crypto markets weren't doing anything. It was absolutely wild. So, you know, there's a little bias inside of me saying that like Bitcoin is capable of doing this, so I always want to hold some Bitcoin, but maybe that's the wrong way of thinking, just because, you know, if I think I understand meta more than other people, then maybe as a profit maxi, I should own less Bitcoin and own more of the other meta assets. But obviously, you know, the moment you start to think that you're better than the markets is the moment you get wrecked, so I don't think that way. Other traders have spent the year relying on the stock to flow model, and identifying these mental models can help you think more independently about what's happening and identify biases in thinking. I think stock to flow is a good way to onboard like new people in crypto, but if you've been into crypto for like more than a year and you're like trying to trade Bitcoin based on stock to flow, I think like what are you doing, right? Stock to flow essentially says Bitcoin is scarce, it's going to go up over time, and predicting price with stock to flow, I don't think it makes any sense. So this is yeah, so I'll just keep going. The worst thing you can do is run headfirst into a metagame that is reaching exuberance. So if you already thought 5 or 6 times about taking a trade, weeks, months have passed, and you have finally plucked up the courage to do it, you're probably too late, right? If it doesn't feel risky anymore, it probably means that it's maximally risky, right? The moment everyone thinks that, you know, this thing is gonna flip Axie or something, or this thing is gonna flip ETH or something, now that's like, that's the dangerous question, right? Because then like who's the incremental buyer, right? For these coins to go up, there needs to be more people buying than selling, right? But if everyone around you has already invested, then, you know, like what do you do, right? And this kind of goes against my riding the trend narrative, but I still think the L1 trade still has legs to go, just because these incentive programs are keep coming, right? They're going to keep coming. But anyways, let's kind of talk about the next meta. And you know, this video is so long that I kind of forgot like what content I have prepared, so I'm gonna scroll through these. Okay, the next meta. So like I mentioned, I'm gonna release a video next week about 2022 predictions. So you know, you have to wait a little bit about like the next meta and whatnot. It'll probably be like 99% wrong anyway, so that probably doesn't even matter. But you know, it's a fun exercise, and who knows, maybe there's like 1% chance I get things right and I get to collect clout. But you know, I feel like one of the interesting things I want to point out is that, you know, when I first got into crypto, right, and as we were heading into 2021, I feel like the narrative, the consensus narrative, was that DeFi is going to onboard the next billion users into crypto, which kind of makes sense, right? I mean, it intuitively makes sense, and I think everyone believed it. But I think heading into 2022, the narrative is not that. It's because DeFi is like pretty hard to use, right? It's going to be games and NFTs that's going to bring the next billion users into crypto. Like maybe more the NFT aspect, but like maybe games too, if like these games can actually, you know, keep shipping and whatnot. And in terms of conclusions and takeaways, and in terms of like additional questions you should be asking yourself, I think what I can share with you is just don't be a maxi of any one thing. Just always be open-minded, right? And be open-minded to changing narratives. And like, sure, like in the month of November, like narrative A has so much potential, but you know, crypto changes so fast. And in the month of December, maybe that narrative is dead, right? You have to be open to changing narratives. It's really easy to marry your bags, right? You get into a particular ecosystem, you like have your entire net worth in a particular ecosystem. You know, your bias is that it's going to go up, right? That's going to be your bias. But what if the market has moved on, right? Then you're just going to get wrecked, right? So don't be a maxi, don't go all in, spread your bets, and be open to changing narratives. Listen to the market, right? If a coin is going up 2x in a week, like what does that tell you, right? Generally it doesn't mean that, you know, a bunch of retail plebs are just like buying that coin. There are big players buying that coin, and if there are big players buying that coin, like why are they buying that coin, right? Maybe there's a fundamental shift in the narrative. Maybe there's a fundamental catalyst that's coming, and you know, if you just look at your watch list and look at the biggest movers, it kind of tells a story of its own, right? Because I feel like markets, you know, I guess price is like in crypto, like price is the fundamentals, right? Because if it goes up, it's bullish, and common sense usually prevails. 2021, like common sense was Ethereum is bullish, no one can use Ethereum. So what will people do? People will go elsewhere that's also EVM and use those chains. What will happen? Those coins will go up. You know, it's kind of what happened. Lastly, I'll leave you guys with some good questions that you should ask yourself. Good questions you should ask yourselves in terms of like forming your own narratives. Because I'm just one guy on the internet, right? Like I'm not gonna get everything right. Like in fact, and I'm probably gonna be wrong most of the times, right? So the goal is for you to develop independent thinking, right? We all have a brain. You're probably smarter than like I am. So let's try to ask these questions and then figure out like, okay, why did this work? And what does that mean for the future of crypto? For example, like why did BSC work, right? Ethereum is unusable. People with like $1,000 to their name wants to ape, all right? They're gonna ape, right? People don't care about decentralization. People will ape into centralized chains as long as they can make money. Why did Polygon and Matic work? Well, it worked because BSC worked, right? And the market learned from BSC that centralized chains can be bullish in a bull market. But also, Polygon and Matic worked because of the incentive programs. Polygon paid you to use DeFi applications, like myself included, and that onboarded millions of users, right? And it made a lot of people money. And if you make people money, then you get to form communities around that, right? Polygon has a strong community of ETH maxis and ETH non-maxis alike. Why is Sol, Luna, AVAX a thing? Right? Why have these three assets been the strongest? Well, like they actually have developers, they have strong narratives, they have their own narratives, and they also have incentive programs, right? Solana and Luna, they don't have incentive programs at least yet, but AVAX literally is, I feel like AVAX is like what Ethereum L2 was supposed to be, right? With incentives, right? So if you think of AVAX that way, then it was pretty obvious like why it has worked. Luna has strong tokenomics, right? I think it's one of the strongest tokenomics in all of crypto. So all you had to do was track the market cap of UST and it just goes up. So, you know, I guess like if you look back into like BSC and Matic, like centralization, people don't care about centralization, right? Maybe like not everything should be on Ethereum. Maybe some use cases are better off on a super centralized chain that's scalable and fast and cheap, you know? And you know, what can you learn from this? Well, Solana going up means that, you know, like you should be more open-minded about like non-EVM chains, right? Like Luna. AVAX going up means that you should look into other chains with incentive programs, right? Matic worked because of incentive programs. AVAX worked because of incentive programs. Phantom worked because of incentive programs. What are the next chains with incentive programs? Those are going to work, right? As long as they're not like totally ghost chains. Why is Jewel literally up only? It's because it's because Axie is literally up only, and people want to find the next Axie. And if the entire market believes that Jewel is the next Axie and can potentially flip Axie, then there's going to be a bid, right? There's going to be a bid, and if you can farm Jewel, like why not farm it, right? And like why not farm it, right? Like why not allocate a small percentage of the portfolio to farm it? Because what if it is what if it is the next Axie? You don't even have to bet that big, right? You can just like bet 1% of the portfolio, right? Because not gonna lie, like I don't know if it's a good entry at this point, right? It's like what, $15? It's crazy, right? But it doesn't mean that it can't get to like $50, right? Like I don't know, we'll see. And you know, like what's gonna stop all this from continuing? You know, like what's gonna stop all this from continuing? I think potentially, a bear market might be formed by like these incentive programs running out, right? Or I guess macro conditions and whatnot. But you know, if the narrative around L1s is that, you know, incentive programs are bullish and there is going to continue to be other incentive programs in 2022, then maybe it's going to keep going on, right? Maybe it's going to keep going on. And you know, I'm going to share this tweet from Suzu. What would be some contrarian crypto theses for 2022, right? Because everyone thought DeFi was going to be the thing in 2021, but I feel like, you know, now the narrative has shifted for like NFTs and gaming. But who knows? Maybe 2022 and 2023, the narrative and the meta is going to be completely different. Maybe it's like the arrival of messaging plus payments, like Telegram, Signal, Line, you know, crypto payments, and onboard 1 billion users themselves. Who knows, right? I don't know. No one knows. Just keep up with the markets, listen to the markets, build your own conviction, test your hypotheses. Don't be a total degen. You'll be fine, right? Just don't get rugged. Don't get liquidated. Manage risk. And if you believe that crypto is going to be up only on a macro scale for the next 10 years, you don't have to bet that big, right? You don't have to make a 10x next month. You know, you can just like increase your stack like 20% a month or something, right? And you're going to be totally fine. Totally fine. Yeah. And in terms of like changing narratives, it's like, you know, if institutions like announce that they're going to pour like $100 billion into ETH DeFi just because they value decentralization, well, screw it. Like, I'm going to sell all my O1 tokens and it's going to go in all in ETH, right? And just be an ETH maxi, right? I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're going to like, you know, spread their bets everywhere, but you know, you got to be open to changing narratives, etc. So that's the end of the video. Very long video. Sorry. I'll try to add timestamps. I feel like I repeated myself many times, but you know, I think just read Cobie's article. I think it's a good one. Thank you guys for watching. Have fun farming out there, and let me know what your thoughts are on 2021 and what you think is in store for 2022. Have a good one.